Have you ever wondered where you stack up against everyone else with their net worth? I'm here to tell you exactly where the average and median is for every single decade. We'll go 20s, 30s, 40s, all the way up to your 60s. I'll also give you 2 to 3 goals depending on the decade you're in, what you should be focusing on in that decade so that your net worth can beat these median numbers. And lastly, I'll give you targets. The target's going to be above average, but if you do the goals and if you stick to the plan, you should be able to get to these numbers. So you can jump around if you need to, but if you're curious, I think it'd be really interesting to say, have I done the goals from 20s? Have I get up for 30s, and try to rank yourself to figure out where exactly you are. So starting off in your 20s, okay, actually before I go to 20s, you have to understand the difference between average and median. I know this is 6th grade math, but a little reminder for you. Average takes into everyone, and it's naturally going to skew to where there's outliers. Median takes the exact middle point of the data set. Because we're talking about net worth, a couple people that are millionaires and billionaires inside a data set are going to skew it way higher. Median's more an accurate reflection of where you probably should be. That's where the 50% mark is inside your group. So I'm going to give you both because I think it's interesting, but I would look more at median than I would average. Inside your 20s, the average net worth is $110,000. The median is about $7,500. Starting to see why I talked about median and average being so wildly different? That's because it's skewing. Your net worth has to take everything into account. This is your assets minus your liabilities. So in your 20s, let's say you have $10,000 in a bank account, you have $20,000 in your 401k, and you have a $40,000 student loan. That's a negative $10,000 net worth. When you're inside your 20s, okay, I'm going to give you 3 goals inside your 20s because this is going to be a massive decade. Hopefully you take this seriously because this is the difference maker for a lot of people. People either get drastically in debt, succumb to consumer debt, they don't take their finances serious, or they can set a good foundation for the rest of their life. So focus on these 3 to set yourself up. Goal number 1, stay out of consumer debt. There are way too many of us that have been told that debt is okay and bad debt is okay because we just took on $100,000 in student loans and all this other stuff. Do everything you can to stay out of consumer debt. I label consumer debt as anything that you can't out-invest. Okay, you will never be able to out-invest a credit card. Those of you that are putting money in your 401k while simultaneously carrying a balance from month to month, stop it. Why are you going to earn 8 to 10% in your 401k and paying 26% in your credit card? Take all the money you have available and attack that consumer debt until you have 0 consumer debt. That should be your biggest focus inside your 20s. Goal number 2, focus on what you're learning, not how much you're making. Now, I know all of you are like, oh yeah, if only I could. What I mean here, there's a drastic difference between making $20 at Panda Express and making $20 as an executive assistant and being around a billionaire. Very different career paths you're putting yourself on. Both pay the exact same amount of money. And the last goal in your 20s is set a budget to invest 15% of your income. Hopefully you're out of consumer debt. Hopefully you've chosen a good job and you're learning good stuff. This is a time where you try to plan to invest 15% of your income. Compound interest is on your side in your 20s. Take every advantage you can of that compound interest and try to save 15%. Yeah, you may not be able to have the nice cars and go on the vacations that some of your friends are, but guess what? Your friends are in crippling debt. They have tons of anxiety around it and they hate their lives because they have so much debt, but they're trying to live a lifestyle. Don't be like those people. Inside your 20s, if you want to have goals, a lot of you are goal-oriented people, okay? On the low end, when you're coming out of your 20s, so you just turned 30, that's the day that I'm talking about. On the low end, you should aim for $40,000. Mid-tier, I'm going to say $50,000. High end is going to be about $75,000 net worth. If you can have a positive net worth heading out of your 20s, you're doing very, very well. That means you stayed out of consumer debt, you invested a little bit of money, you're taking stuff seriously, and that would be my goal for people that are just entering their 30s. Now you're in your 30s. The average net worth for someone in their 30s is $309,000, while the median is a little over $35,000. Vast difference once again. We already talked about this, but what this is saying is it's inside your 30s that people start having a legitimate positive net worth. I'm only going to give you 2 goals inside your 30s, but they're very, very important, okay? Inside your 30s, you need to focus on maximizing your earning potential. Hopefully in your 20s, you chose the right job and you didn't focus just on the dollar. You learned a skill set. Inside your 30s, your only goal should be to be in the top 10% of your career by the time you leave your 30s. You can be a top 10% plumber, electrician, videographer, marketer, salesperson, business owner. I don't care what it is. As long as you can get the skill set to be in that top 10%, you'll make a whole lot of money. And that should be one of the only things you're focusing on inside your 30s. If you have 2 options for a job and one pays $1 more, but one has a mentor of someone that's considered one of the best in the industry, take the one that's best in the industry. That during your 30s will propel you to the top 10%, and your lifetime earnings 20s will 100x. Inside your 30s, your goal should be to eliminate all consumer debt. In your 20s, you were just trying to avoid it. In your 30s, we're actually getting out of it. Any debt over an 8% interest rate needs to be gone by the time you leave the 30s. Lifestyle creep is going to be something that you have to avoid like the plague in your 30s. A lot of your friends will be 5-10 years into your career. You're going to start seeing boats and vacations and everything else, and they're taking on a lot of consumer debt to do that, and you're not going to be them. Don't buy the boat. Don't buy the dream car. Don't do stupid things with your money and take on consumer debt. You'll never outinvest it. You can't regularly outinvest anything above a 10% interest rate, so do not take on that interest rates if you don't have to, and pay it all off as quick as you can. Inside your 30s, this is once again the day you're turning 40 years old. I'm going to have targets for you. On the low end, $150,000. On the middle end, I'm going to give you $200,000. High end, we're going to go $500,000. If you can hit that middle tier, $200,000 net worth by the time you're 40, compound interest alone will get you over $1 million by the time you retire in your 60s. Theoretically, you wouldn't have to put another dollar into retirement. You could be a millionaire if you can hit that target by the time you turn 40 years old. Now, the issue with this is a lot of people struggle to hit that, obviously, because the median's like $35,000. The other thing, a lot of it is in people's primary homes. Don't become house poor in this. Make sure that most of that money is investment, so it's actually growing and something you can use later on. In your 40s, the average net worth of someone inside their 40s is $776,000. That's pretty crazy that that's the average, but the median is $124,000, much more realistic. In your 40s, these are your prime growth years. This is when you need to be focused on growth, okay? In your 20s, you found the job. In 30s, you fine-tuned your job, became in the top 10%. In your 40s, you're going to rake it in, okay? Hopefully at this point, you're at your peak of your career, you're the top 10% of your field, and this is where you maximize your earnings. Inside your 40s, you got two goals inside your 40s. The first one is really easy. You can do it today, and that's figure out your retirement number. There's a reason I haven't told you to do this before then is because honestly, in your 20s and 30s, you're so far from retirement, it's going to be nearly impossible to identify that number. What is inflation? What's policy going to look like? What am I going to look like? What does my career look like? You likely won't know. On the day you turn 50 years old, you should have an idea of what that number looks like. You're likely roughly 10 to 15 years away from retirement, and you should be able to identify how much you're going to need. Simple rule of thumb is the 4% rule. I've done lots of videos on this. You can search my social media or YouTube for it. The 4% rule will tell you how much you need to retire. Real quick though, whatever income you want inside of retirement, you multiply that by 25, and that's how much you should have in assets on retirement. That doesn't take into account Social Security and a couple other things, so be smart, put it down on paper. That's a real general rule of thumb to help you figure out what that retirement number is. Back into whether you're on track, off track, and create a plan to get there so you can have the retirement that you want. Your other goal inside your 40s is don't have a midlife crisis. I know that sounds funny, but avoid large purchases. So many people have done this plan and they finally get the peak earning careers like, I'm in my peak. I now deserve to have this massive large purchase. And they go buy stupid cars and stupid boats and stupid houses. What ends up happening is it takes away your highest earning years. These are the years that you had the chance to create the retirement you wanted, but instead you decide to blow it on stuff that you didn't actually need, and now your retirement's going to suffer. Make sure you know what you're doing, set up a plan, know your retirement number, avoid large purchases, and you are going to set yourself up to have a very good retirement here in about 10 to 15 years. For your targets, okay, on the low end, I'm going to give you the day you turn 50, $400,000. On the mid, we're going to go $500,000. And on the high end, we're going to go $1 million. If you can be at a $500,000 target at 50 years old, once again, you will be a millionaire by the time you're 60. And that's the goal we're trying to strive with all of these numbers. Inside your 50s, the average is $1.38 million, but the median is $287,000. The one thing inside the 50s is I feel like so many people get so close to retirement, this is where it starts to become real, that they almost go the opposite direction and become so frugal and so careful about money because they're so scared about retirement that they forget that these are some of the best years of life. Your kids are reaching adulthood. If you have kids, you likely have more vacation time. You have the money to finally take vacations. Yes, I spent this whole video about talking about saving, investing, staying out of debt, all that kind of stuff. But money is made to bless the lives of others. Please don't get in that mindset where you become so scared about retirement that you forget to actually enjoy life. Okay, that's just my reminder to some of you. Make sure you're set up for retirement. Make sure you're smart. You know what you're doing, but also remember to enjoy the little things. Inside your 50s, I'm going to give you two goals. Okay, the first one, diversify your investments more than you probably ever have. We are getting to a point where you need to secure your retirement. Now, I'm not saying you have to go all into cash or all into bonds or anything like that, but diversification preserves wealth that doesn't create it, and you're in a time where you want to preserve the wealth that you've created. If you have a combination of survival funds, maybe some bonds, stocks, real estate, private markets, all across the board, when recession hits, it won't hurt as bad because you will not go down as far as if you are all in one asset class and that thing tanks. The other piece of diversification that you need to think through is tax planning of those investments. I don't have time to teach you everything right now, but what I do need you to think of and then start doing some research, search my YouTube videos, talk to professionals, is this is the time to plan for the taxes of retirement. Are the majority of your funds in a 401k? Do you need to transition those to a Roth 401k or a Roth IRA? How are you going to take your Social Security? Is your Social Security going to be taxed because you're making too much income? These are the types of questions you need to be asking yourself, because the difference of $1 million that comes to you in retirement tax-free and the difference of $1 million that comes to you taxed in retirement is vastly different. The second piece of advice I have for someone in their 50s is to plan for legacy wealth. What I mean by this is the time you need to have your trust, estate, wills, healthcare directives, everything set up so that you don't lose pointless money when the time does come that you pass away. We don't know when the date is. I hope it's 100 years from now for you. But what I do know is if you do not have a trust, the average will to go through probate, I think, is like between 5 and 7%. If you had $1 million, that's $50,000 to $70,000 that you would give to probate attorneys, the court process, and everything like that. Why waste that money? Take a little bit of time, set up your will, set it exactly how you want to, so that when you do pass, that can be a celebration of your life and that your loved ones aren't fighting over money, wishing you'd done it different, and paying way too many fees. Inside your 50s, I'm going to give you some targets, okay? On the low end, you should be about 600,000, middle 750, high end 1.5 million. Once again, when you're turning 60 years old, I'm trying to make it so you're a millionaire inside of retirement. Those low and middle ends are going to be really, really rough to get to a millionaire, but you can do it. Do everything you can to get the retirement that you want. That just gives you a benchmark of where you should be. In your 60s, the average net worth for someone inside their 60s is $1.69 million, where the median is $439,000. You want to be closer to the average on this one than you do the median. In your 20s, you are probably definitely close to the median. Hopefully we skewed you up so you're closer to the average now, because you are a millionaire inside of retirement. In your 60s, now's the time that we start implementing everything we planned. Hopefully your tax plan is there for your retirement accounts. Hopefully you're close to the number. If not, you will be there in the next 5 to 7 years. Hopefully legacy's done. Now's the time you get to enjoy the fruits for the next 10, 20, 30 years where you don't have to work and you can pour into the people that you love. Hopefully this video was a little bit of a wake-up call for a lot of you. The average American doesn't have $500 inside their savings accounts. So if you have more than that, you're beating the average, well done, but that is not enough to retire on. We have to, as a society, plan better for retirement, think through what we need to do, and do the steps that we just talked about so you can actually have the retirement that you want. Hopefully this was helpful. If you found value from this video, please subscribe. We do videos every single week, so come back next week for another video on how to grow your net worth.